Welcome to Postcards, a brief look at people, places, the arts and curiosities from around the world. On today's program, rambling through some of the finest countryside in England and Wales. How we looked at daily news prior to the introduction of newspapers and magazines. The distribution of fine art around the world, courtesy the Royal Mail. Relics of the Boer War go on sale. And German buried treasure from the forest near Dresden. But first up, for the last 52 years, Edinburgh, the capital city of Scotland, has played host to a kaleidoscope of talent. Over a 2-week period, musicians, dancers, comedians and actors perform around the clock in the theatres and on the street in what has become the Festival of Fringe. The Fringe, which runs parallel to the International Festival of Edinburgh, remains true to the open-door policy on which it was founded, allowing performers to test their wit in front of anyone who'll listen. The festival also provides a forum for entertainers of all ages and possible future stars. Many famous comedians like Rowan Atkinson started their careers here.
Oh, Nikki, you're so fine, you blow my mind. Hey, Nikki. Hey, Nikki.
The festival's reputation draws performers from all over the world. Eccentricus by Cirque Eloise from Quebec attracted crowds of over 500 a night in its first week. The act uses a bare minimum of props, relying on the technical skill of the artists. The show moves from frivolity to a dramatic, eerie finale. When the taiko drum group Mugenkyo first came to Edinburgh, the company was entirely Japanese. The athletic style of performance was so popular with audiences and locals, a Scottish contingent was formed. This year the group comprises Japanese, Glaswegians and New Zealanders. The music mesmerises the listener and, despite its pulsating, almost deafening sound, is strangely calming. The drummers say this is because it aims to emulate the heartbeat and the rhythm of life. The true test of any comedian is conquering the stand-up circuit. During the festival, up to 100 comedians perform daily. Irish comic Jim Owen is in his 4th sellout season. This Scottish stage a tent away from home. While anyone can perform at the Fringe, to be granted a stage at the Edinburgh International Festival, which commences a week after its eclectic sister, an invitation from the director must be offered. Over the years, the festival has been shaped by the individual tastes of those at the helm. This piece, entitled Artifact, shows the athleticism and grace of classical dance and is performed by the Dutch National Ballet. Le Théâtre Talipo is from Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean. Last year, their performance of The Water Carriers earned them several awards. The company also includes actors from Zimbabwe and France. The piece is a modern, multiracial fable, combining local instruments from the island, singing and dance. Originally, the festival invited artists and companies from around the world to take part, and 3 of 4 local Scottish theatre companies decided to put on shows themselves to take advantage of the visiting audiences and critics. Over the years, more and more companies started following suit, eventually leading to what's become known as the Festival Fringe. Both festivals still attract visitors from all over the world. This year, over 300,000 tickets were sold. However, nothing attracts the crowds like the pageantry and pomp of the Edinburgh military tattoo, now in its 50th year. First conceived as the Scottish Army's contribution to the Edinburgh International Festival, the tattoo has evolved into a show combining a myriad of international performers, both military and civilian. Over the years, it has incorporated steel bands, baton twirlers, drill teams, Zulus, camels, elephants, cavalry, motorcycles and police dogs. This year, the Barbados Defence Force Band, with its renowned stilt acrobats, the Moko Jumpies, and their 6-year-old cadet, stole the show. 200,000 people attend the tattoo annually, while 100 million watch it on television. Over the years, the event has become as diverse and as popular as the international and fringe festivals themselves. For the army of British walkers known as Ramblers, victory is in the air. After a century-long battle for the right to roam on some of the finest countryside in England and Wales, the British government is about to enshrine in law their right to walk on 4 million acres of open land. Those who have been fortunate enough to already access the countryside know the benefits it gives: the peace of mind, relief from stress, the improved good health. But 90% of Britain's countryside is privately owned. For centuries, access to land like the estate of Cottlestone Manor in Somerset's Quantock Hills has been through voluntary agreement between the local council and the landowner concerned. The new law takes away his age-old right to refuse. Current landowners believe today there should be managed access, taking into consideration land uses such as farming, forestry, shooting and so on. Health and safety implications must be looked at. A crucial factor in the management of public access to the land around Cottlestone Manor is the Quantock Hill Ranger Service. On popular tourist spots like Lydiard Hill, the rangers act as a bridge between landowner and public. In return for allowing public access, Cottlestone Manor's Hugh Warmington receives a grant, and the local authority funds the Ranger Service to look after walkers and wildlife alike. The Rangers hope this example of good management will be allowed to continue and encouraged elsewhere under the new legislation. They'd like to perhaps have some influence on the bill, an ability to zone areas, in particular sensitive wildlife areas. Land management is one of the details of the new legislation yet to be clarified, and it's one of a number of concerns for the Country Landowners Association. Its members are worried about the extra costs and responsibilities the legislation might bring, as well as a general loss of control of their land. The challenge of addressing the concerns of landowners and all those affected by the new legislation falls to the Countryside Agency, launched earlier this year. Its task is to make the legislation work.
A sustainable countryside is important to everybody.
Deputy Chair of the Countryside Agency, Pam Warhurst, believes practical progress will have to be made at a grassroots level, through local access forums which will bring together sensitive representation to the different types of landscape and different needs of each area. The agency also has to address the worries of people like Bridget Bedell and her husband, who run a family farm in Surrey. 1/3 of their 2,000-acre estate is open to the public, thanks to a voluntary agreement made by Bridget's grandmother. The new law, though, opens up mountain, heath, moor, down and common land to the public, and Bridget wonders how people will know where their new rights begin and end. She foresees problems in this field, to which she happily allows public access now. The government says that all open land, like this common land on Bridget's estate, will be studied and entered on maps, a job also being undertaken by the Countryside Agency. But here too the debate rages. Some say the public wants circular guided walks next to car parks, not the right to roam freely over open land, and that resources will be taken from one to the other. But the principle of the right to walk on open land is one that the Ramblers have been determined to pursue, come rain or shine. They say that landowners will have the freedom to restrict walkers wherever reasonable land management needs demand it. At rallies like this, it takes more than a downpour to dampen their enthusiasm. It's areas like this that highlight the problem the government is determined to address. On one part of the hill, access is allowed, but the view from the top is out of bounds. Not since ancient times, when Britain had a predominantly hunter-gatherer society, have people had the right to roam freely across open land. The Ramblers say all they want is access to that heritage. The new law is expected within the next Parliament, a move anticipated with eagerness by walkers, yet with some apprehension by landowners. The face of the British countryside isn't about to change. Only 10% makes up the open land to be included in this legislation. But it's still a radical step, and one that will need careful handling. Before glossy magazines or even poorly produced newspapers, printmakers were the opinion formers of the day. The British Museum's exhibition of prints from the 16th to the 19th century give a fascinating and vivid insight into the cultural mores of the working class Britain over 300 years. Curiosities like Siamese twins, these were born in Oxfordshire in 1552, were of daily interest to the ordinary people. And much like the tabloid newspapers today, subject matter focused on crime, royalty, politics, war, sex and comedy. As macabre as it may seem to us today, executions were an enjoyable form of entertainment until 1868, when they ceased to be held in public. The lurid stories behind the person on the gallows appealed to the public's sense of melodrama, and printmakers cashed in. People would buy prints of the execution where they'd gathered to watch it. They'd buy them as a sort of souvenir, telling the story of the hideous murder or whatever it was that was being punished on the day. Prints were familiar to all sorts of people, rich or poor. They were found in homes, in the church, in school, the tavern or in the workplace. They were also found in the street, where everybody would have seen them, regardless of class or background. Religious imagery in print was a source of controversy. Before the Reformation in the 16th century, moralising clergymen quickly realised prints were an easy way of spreading their message. This image is an indulgence. At a price, it guaranteed a remission of 26,000 years of punishment in hell to those who knelt before it and prayed. After the Reformation, such images were heavily censored, and printmakers had to take the rules seriously. If they didn't, their work could be seized or worse. Religious imagery made a popular comeback in the Victorian period, and became an acceptable and popular subject. As one of Britain's leading contemporary artists, David Hockney's work is usually displayed in top galleries or exclusive collections. However, recently there was a chance to see the master's work for free. An exhibition of top painters, photographers, sculptors and other artists is based on perhaps the widest distribution of fine art around the world, the Royal Mail's Millennium Collection, 48 postage stamps issued through 1999 to celebrate 1,000 years of British history. Royal Mail is about communication. It's about the postal system, moving letters and items from point A to point B in the same country and all around the world. The exhibition is also about communicating, about the past and time, a travellogue through time. The exhibition is more than just a show of postage stamps. It features the original artwork for the celebrated Millennium Stamp Collection, and a vast array of artefacts used by the artists to inspire their designs, from rare souvenirs and footage of England's last World Cup victory to the reflecting telescope developed by the 17th century genius Sir Isaac Newton. Like the stamp collection, the exhibition is divided into 12 segments or tales, each telling a different story about the last 1,000 years of British history. The Traveller's Tales section of the exhibition features Captain Cook's voyages of exploration. One of the most interesting items is his logbook, actually made by Captain Cook in 1770. On this page he notes in his hand the sighting of the coast of Western Australia. Most of the historical treasures on display come from the Royal Library vaults, including the journals of smallpox vaccinator Edward Jenner. To evidence of more recent scientific milestones. The first ever model image of DNA, the basic building block of life, built in 1953, still stands as a tribute to its makers, Watson and Crick. Innovators share the spotlight with entertainers. The pioneer of comic film Charlie Chaplin, now immortalised by post as well as film. The Millennium Stamp is also dedicated to the Daleks, those robotic predators who had a generation of children cowering in front of their televisions. The menacing image snapped by leading society photographer Lord Snowdon. The exhibition is free of charge, and Royal Mail hopes its show will encourage people to collect stamps as an investment in history, perhaps to be passed down as gifts and heirlooms. A total of 1 billion Millennium stamps will be printed to satisfy demand from collectors around the world. More than simply a set of postage stamps, the series represents an exclusive collection of British art available at any local post office. A 16-year project to refurbish the home of Britain's national art collection is now complete and open to the public. The multi-million-pound North Galleries project has been funded entirely from private sector donations and ultimately provides a home for the National Gallery's preeminent collection of Dutch paintings. Paintings of significance have been strategically hung on end walls of the Dutch rooms and can be seen through several rooms, enticing the viewer to explore further. The enormous canvases are hung in large day-lit galleries, and cabinet-style rooms allow close-up scrutiny of the smaller works. It's an appropriate setting for the Dutch paintings, which account for 1/5 of the gallery's entire collection. 20 paintings by Rembrandt warrant a special room of their own and span the master's entire career. Their enormous flourishing culture came about through the prosperity of the United Dutch Provinces and the independence they gained over the course of the 17th century from Spain. The Dutch Republic was the wealthiest country in Europe during the 18th century. This well-known Flemish painting, which incorporates several miniature masterpieces, depicts the local connoisseurs of art scrutinising a collection. The anonymous artist conveys the contemporary preoccupation with the art world and also belies the wealth and influence of the region. The National Galleries also opened an education centre to help interpret the collection for adults, students and children. More than 110,000 school visits each year access the school curriculum through paintings and foster a love and understanding of fine art. The National Gallery runs lectures, workshops and study days relating to the collection of some 2,300 paintings. Experienced lecturers make sure both children and adults have an enjoyable time and leave with the feeling there's lots more for them to see on a return visit. Spink's Auction House in London is marking 100 years since the outbreak of the Anglo-Boer War, with a sale of relics from the conflict, which saw Dutch settlers trying to resist the inclusion of South Africa into the British Empire. The momentous war of 2.5 years, which commenced with a large battle and ended with a guerrilla war, has largely been ignored because soon after its end, the First World War broke out. The catalogue includes historical documents and paintings recalling the major campaigns of the war, as well as the fear, gallantry and savagery of a conflict which saw the first use of concentration camps. This picture shows Private Albert Curtis, who won a Victoria Cross for his bravery in rescuing his wounded commanding officer while under heavy fire. Another of the 3 Victoria Crosses on sale was awarded to Sergeant James Firth, also awarded for rescuing comrades under fire. A pen used by Britain's later wartime leader Winston Churchill, then a war correspondent, is one of the items. As is a watch he gave to a British mine worker who helped him in his legendary escape from captivity on a colliery truck. Personal items include letters home from British soldiers and one of condolences from a hospital nurse in Natal to the mother of a soldier who died there of fever, a common fate for many. For the veteran British soldier, one of the most interesting mementos is a series of letters written by a British private in the cavalry. Travelling to South Africa on board a ship, his letters start by saying, "The food is a bit rough." Unfortunately, like so many British troops, he died of fever. 16,000 British troops died of disease in South Africa rather than being killed in battle. The centenary of the Boer War has renewed interest in this dark but historically significant period in the history of both South Africa and Britain. This 17th century silver gilt and rock crystal head marriage cup, hurriedly buried by one of Germany's oldest royal families in 1945 and uncovered by treasure hunters only in 1996, is expected to sell for around $3.2 million US when it's auctioned at Sotheby's. Precious stones are set in the feathers on top. It's the only object of its size by a silversmith Yaminsa to be sold. The cup is part of a collection of art known as the Maritzburg Treasures, belonging to the Royal House of Saxony. It was hidden in a forest near Dresden in the former East Germany by the sons of Prince Ernst Heinrich to prevent it from being looted by the advancing Soviet army. The collection also includes a gold and jewelled flower basket, expected to fetch up to $640,000 US. This silver-gilt gold and enamel basket is the only work by the Dresden goldsmith Dillinger ever to be sold. The collection was buried in 2 places. The Royal Estate's forester, aware of one of the sites, was forced by the Russians to reveal its whereabouts. The contents were uncovered and taken to Russia. Fortunately, the Moor's cup remained safely buried close by. The Moor's head was made for a wedding between the Pucci and the Strozzi families in Florence in the 16th century. The second burial site remained undiscovered until amateur treasure hunters found it in 1996. They reported it to the authorities, who excavated it professionally. It was then returned to the family. And that's all for today. Join us again next time for a postcard look at interesting people, places and the arts.